Welcome to Ask the Educator, a podcast brought to you by Healthmark Industries. Are you a sterile processing technician or manager? Maybe you work in infection prevention or biomedical engineering. Whether you're a frontline tech, endoscopy tech, OR nurse, or surgical services administrator, you undoubtedly have influence in medical device processing at your facility. In each episode, we speak with experts from the Healthmark Clinical Affairs team, industry leaders, or special guests from the trenches to answer your questions and bring you relevant industry information, equipping you for excellence in medical device processing. My name is Kevin Anderson, and I will be your host. Now let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is Kevin Anderson, and joining me for part 2 on our peel pouch discussion is Malinda Elammari. Malinda, thanks for coming back and joining me on part 2 of this series. I think is going to be at least 3 parts. So Malinda, what did we want to get into with this one?
Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me back. I feel like I never left. This is
right.
So this time, and I was thinking about this last time. I said Pandora's box, but I should make a correction. This is Pandora's pack, right?
Yeah.
Or pouch, Pandora's pouch.
Yeah.
And so I think we were talking about, we wanted to get into double pouching this time and tip protectors. So
yeah, that's right. So double pouching is a great topic. And I think we see it a lot. It's a very common thing. Sometimes we see, you've probably seen it too, where some items are double pouch, some items are single pouch. So you might have a sort of mixed method in your facility. Why don't we just start off first with maybe what is the common reason as to why people double peel pouch? I think that's always a good place to start.
When I get asked this question, I often get asked the question of, should I double peel pouch? Should everything be double peel pouched? And the answer is no, it's not necessary that you double peel pouch everything. It really goes by the hospital's preference and what they prefer. Things that get double peel pouched are items that would be hard for, to be aseptically presented. So something that's really long might be something, for instance, Da Vinci arms, right? Those are something that we see often.
Endo-wrist,
right? Exactly. Yeah. Getting double peel pouched, stuff that has multiple pieces to it, like an acorn manipulator or something like that has different tips. Often those get a double peel pouch concept happening. So yeah, that's usually the rule, and the main reason is something that for aseptic presentation would be difficult for the surgical tech to grab or the circulator to actually present.
I love that you mentioned the aseptic presentation as a reason. And then you gave those examples, because this is exactly a question that we got from an accreditation surveyor. Why are you double pouching these things? And that was the exact answer I gave him. And he was actually happy with that answer. So if anybody out there is in their accreditation window, don't forget to have that rationale in the back pocket of yours to possibly explain your procedure there. But there are a lot of things that we see when it comes to double pouching, and that is, one of the better reasons for it to give. But when people do double pouch, we also see potential problems. And so what are kind of some of the problems that you've seen when it comes to double pouching?
Oh, so one of my favorite things that I am seeing is utilizing different manufacturers to double peel pouch. They might have one brand in one size and another brand in another size, and they're combining the two. Or they might have like a self-seal combined inside of a heat seal, or a heat seal combined into a self-seal as well. First of all, the two manufacturer thing is not validated like that. So manufacturers don't go and be like, oh, hey, Kevin, let me use your peel pouch and I'm going to validate to make sure that we can double ours up. It has to be, Kevin's peel pouches or Malinda's peel pouches,
right,
if you're going to double. I don't have any, but if I did, I would be rich. Yep. But as far as the self-seal and heat seal concept, once again, it goes back to your IFUs and what are they validated to do? Most of them are not validated to be interchanged like that.
That's a big one, and one that, of course, I've seen. And I will just say, already touched upon accreditation surveyors. And I think that's another thing that they can look out for. And one of the things that when it comes to the two different manufacturers thing, because you mentioned why this is an issue. It is an issue because manufacturers, like to your point, don't validate with mixed manufactured products. The other thing is that it's going to be really easy for people to pinpoint a lot of times if it is two different manufacturers, because some of them are blue, some of them are green, some of them are a different color. And sometimes that stands out like a sore thumb. If there's an issue with sizing, like you mentioned, maybe they had two different sizes, reach out to the manufacturer for both sizes and find out what you're capable of getting your hands on so that you can use the same manufacturer for each size as opposed to mixing two different manufacturers. So really good point there. Are there any other common issues you're seeing regarding double pouching?
Another big one is folding. So back to not having the correct size, we see people fold the inner pouch to fit inside the outer pouch. And we know, according to our standards, that the pouches are supposed to be flat, paper to paper, plastic to plastic inside each other, and even includes the little tabs at the top of your chevron pouches. Not folding those over to make sure it fits inside, making sure that they're nice and flat. So rule of thumb is 1 inch from the edge of the pouch to the inner pouch. Same thing with your instruments, right? 1 inch from the edge of your pouch to your instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. I think folding and the size, like you said, with the 1 inch, those are great observations. We see all kinds of things. I know Stephen in one of his presentations had one where the inner pouch was just cut and it was used like almost like a holder instead of an actual peel pouch. So modifying the pouch is not a good idea either, and then using that inside of another peel pouch. So again, we got to go back to the IFUs. The IFUs are those things that will always be applicable no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's, peel pouches or the sealers or what have you. Those are the kinds of things that we have to be mindful of at each stage of the process. Selection of size, selection of seal, whether we double pouch or not. But there's other issues that you've seen out there on your mind, and go ahead and share some more. What else have you been seeing out there?
Yeah. So one of the other things is we see the inner pouches being used almost as a tip protector for instruments. They're not sealed. So your inner pouch needs to be sealed along with your outer pouch. So both pouches should be sealed. They're not validated to be tip protectors and act in that capacity. So making sure that both pouches are sealed and have that seal happening.
Yeah. So you just brought up a great point about tip protection. And that's actually a great sort of segue, I guess, because tip protection is another thing that we tend to see that can be quite an issue. I mean, I just got sent loads of pictures from an account where tip protectors were used in all kinds of various ways within peel pouches. What have you seen with tip protectors?
I've seen some of those pictures, Kevin. Those were pretty amazing pictures. I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is just not using tip protectors. If they do use them, they don't use them correctly. So for instance, the paper type tip protectors. So those type of tip protectors, they have, the little flap that folds up to hold the instrument open. I refer to it as a diaper. You're putting a little diaper on your instrument. And I see so many times that people will just slide the instrument in, let's say a hemostat, and they don't open it and use the diaper to hold it open. So halfway through sterilization, the thing closes back over. And you've got this great concept where, it will actually hold the instrument open and it's not being utilized. I know we've seen the plastic tip protectors being used. And a lot of times, depending on the instruments, those are great. They have their place for utilization, right? But not every instrument should have that versus this, right? So for your stringed instruments, to me, the better option is using the one that's going to actually hold it in the open position. And the paper ones, the plastic ones tend to stick to the pouch, if you will. And then they wind up, the instrument just slides right out of it, right? And so you got this instrument here on one end, and then you got the tip protector sitting over on the other side.
Yeah, you're right. So selection of the right size and the right type is really important. I've seen that too, where the plastic ones or vinyl, whatever their composition is material wise, they end up off of the instrument. And then now you have no protection for the instrument or the peel pouch. One thing to be considerate of, I think, when it comes to tip protection is you're trying to protect two different things. You're trying to protect the instrument, but also the pouch itself. And then some tip protectors, like you mentioned, the card style or paper style, has that flap or diaper, as you call it, to keep a hinged instrument in the open position. So those are real nice designs, and they're there for a reason. But we see them misused all the time. Like you said, either they don't use the flap and they close up on you, or maybe sometimes I've seen them where multiple instruments were just crammed into that tip protector when it wasn't really designed to hold them that way. So it's selection and then using it correctly, right? I mean, would you say that's the most common issue when it comes to tip protection?
For sure. Yeah. And just actually having it, right? You go, you see like they have the paper tip protectors at their account and they use it for one thing, but then like all the hemostats and all the scissors don't have it or something like that. And it's like, wait, just you have them, use them for this, right? Like this is why they're here. I will tell you, one of the creative things that I've seen is they had it was a sponge stick inside a paper tip protector, and then they took the plastic one and stuck it up into plastic part of the paper in between the two jaws to hold it in the open position so it didn't close. But they didn't use the diaper. And I'm like, wait, I'm so confused. But I really had to give them an A for ingenuity. That was amazing. And I know in one of your pictures, you had a really great concept too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're seeing a lot of creative ways to use tip protectors. And I guess the main point is to go back to the IFU and learn about how it's really meant to be used and use it in that way. We've seen the plastic type tip protectors used to hold ratcheted instruments open, where they were actually placed on the ratchets themselves instead of the actual tip of the instrument. Lots of creative ways of using them out there. So
we give them an A for creativity. I will say that.
Yeah, and generally, I want to approve of creativity and make sure that people do use problem solving skills and things like that and critical thinking. But we do have lines and boundaries to stay within, and usually that comes from the IFU. So common theme right there. Before we wrap up this second part of the episode, I wanted to hit on a couple points that we had brought up in our discussion prior to planning, when we were planning these podcasts, and I didn't want to skip over it. We mentioned about how with double peel pouching, there's validations going on there. Well, there's also validations that you brought to my attention that I think would be a great idea for you to share about this. What are the other things that we need to look out in terms of validation? Like, what are you seeing that have been breaches in that?
What we're seeing with validation too is accounts don't know or are not paying attention to the IFUs of what is validated for their peel pouches. For instance, some peel pouches are not validated to be double peel pouch. So there was never a validation study that you can double them up. And so if that wasn't done, then you cannot do it unless you're going to go through the whole validation process at your facility. And I can tell you there's very far and few people in between who are willing to do that. Also, stuff like lumen items. There are peel pouches out there that state that they are not validated for lumen items. and they are very commonly used manufacturing companies. And so just ensuring that what you are putting in your peel pouch is validated, and how you're utilizing your peel pouch is validated to do so. The other factor is peel pouches are considered an outside containment device, just like your wraps, just like your containers, your rigid containers. What is outside can't go in. So you cannot take a rigid container and wrap it. Now, I've seen it done. It was just an amazement, but or you're not supposed to take same concept with taking wraps and putting them in rigid containers or putting them in peel pouches. So you cannot take a peel pouch and put it inside your rigid container to help separate. I know this was a practice that we used to do long ago, but it is no longer. It's been brought to the forefront that this is not validated to do so like that. So do not use your peel pouches as bags or separators in your trays.
I like that. That's a great point. And I love how you put it. What's meant to be outside, i.e. your sterile barrier, is not meant to go inside of another sterile barrier. So I think that's a great point to end on. And I think that, I guess, if there was a common theme amongst both episodes so far, and will probably translate into the third, is to follow that IFU and you won't go wrong. So I thank you for sharing your expertise on this.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
That wraps up our second podcast in this series on peel pouches. Just to do a quick recap, Malinda Elammari shared some more of her observations from traveling to a lot of departments and some of the practices she has been seeing with peel pouches. We talked about several things, from double pouching to selecting the correct size pouch and the correct type of tip protector. We also discussed using peel pouches according to their IFUs, because it is common to see creative yet not validated uses for peel pouches. No, we shouldn't be using peel pouches as organizers inside of wrapped or containerized sets. We see a lot of different things with peel pouches. It might be a good idea to audit your processes and ensure that your practices are up to industry standards and in alignment with your manufacturer's IFUs. I hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Please remember to subscribe and to share the podcast so that others may benefit as well. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, Healthmark Education, as we will be adding more video content there as well. Thanks again for listening. All opinions expressed on this show are those of the presenters. Before using any medical device, it is important to review the device manufacturer's instructions for use.